and welcome to the EFN Presents review of Season 4, Episode 8, Rarity Takes Manehattan. Joining me today, I have Calligraphy.
Hi.
And Dpad.
Heyo.
Thank you for joining us today. So, fashion in the big city. Anyone else get the feeling we've seen an episode like this before, way back in Season 2?
A little bit on a smaller scale, yeah, but this kind of just took the whole, New York playwright, costume designer drama. Basically, it took Project Runway and ponified it.
Kind of, but I mean, at least there's a difference between here she's going for, more of a job prospect, trying to make something for herself, in Sweet and Elite and Canterlot. She was going for, I actually don't even remember what she was going to Canterlot for.
She was going there for, like, a visit or something. Twilight called in a favor, and she got a room in the castle and then tried to play up as this bigwig.
Yeah.
Because remember, kids, if you pretend to be successful, you will get a man.
Fake it until you make it?
Bingo.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the big differences between this episode and previous Rarity episodes. In previous Rarity episodes, like Suited for Success and Sweet and Elite, Rarity's acts of generosity are usually limited to one. Mm-hmm. She's making a dress for Twilight. She's making a dress for her friends. But in this episode, throughout the entire thing, she is the element of generosity in a place that sorely needs it. And that's something I don't think we really saw a lot of Rarity being in previous seasons. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, it kind of felt like, oh, geez, it looks like somebody who's, first time in New York and pays every bum on the street. She's going to go broke in like 2 days.
Yeah. But, I'm a big Rarity fan, and in the first season, her character was great. That's where I became a Rarity fan. But in Season 2 and Season 3, her character was written more prissy, and I didn't really enjoy it. And she was being taught how to be her element. Like in Sisterhood Social, Applejack had to explain to her why she was wrong. And I think here there's less of that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, generosity doesn't necessarily mean giving money or making something for your friends. It could be spending time with your little sister when you don't necessarily want to. So they are using Rarity to teach about generosity, but they're using it more as her character fault than her character trait.
Yes.
Although in some of those episodes, like in Sweet and Elite, she was going to make the dress for Twilight, and she didn't. She got caught up in everything in Canterlot. And Rarity really is the emotional character. She has the drama coach. She breaks down a number of times in this episode, in the hotel room and in the lobby when they're having the contest. And that's usually when she does something wrong. It's because she gets caught up in something that is her passion. It kind of consumes her life and who she is. She gets excited, she gets emotional, and at the very least, that's believable, but to some extent, you have to excuse her, because I think that's something people can relate to, getting swept up in something so much that you forget about things, sometimes important things, like she does in this episode with the dresses, and later on with her friends and who she really is.
Right. And also, this was kind of something that showed a little bit of, you can be a great person, but still being taken advantage of by people who would see you wrong. But if, you stick with your passions and, do what you really enjoy and, maintain, the good aspects of yourself, eventually everything will come right around.
I agree with that. I kind of hate that one of my favorite characters is maybe not as emotionally mature as maybe some of the other main six.
I wouldn't say it's not emotionally mature. I'd say, it just kind of fits in with her character archetype where she's kind of like this, I don't want to say drama queen, but just this very emotional character, highs and lows. She's dynamic. She's not, two-dimensional where she's always giddy or always melodramatic. Yeah, she has the drama couch, but at the same time she has the endless supply of gems and welfare and happiness and blah, blah, blah.
But we do see the other characters go into, they have their happy moments, they have their sad moments, but they're never as extreme or overwhelming as Rarity's, and I think that's part of why I was not so happy with their character in the second and third season, because she really was made out to be this prissy, over-the-top drama queen, really, and I don't think she's necessarily like that.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe just, trying to take some writer's liberty with it and try to make it a little bit more just humorous, really, just kind of when you look at it. Because, with how dynamic of a character she is, I actually enjoy having, incredible highs and lows, because she kind of sets off this... Her emotional extremes can highlight the stability of other characters in their character archetypes, because reflecting as opposed to her highs and lows. But she does have her fair share of, median emotional stability.
That and Rarity being dramatic is just funny. I mean, we've seen that in season 4, Castlemania. She's running around with the tapestry, you know, covering her head. In Bats, she's got a biohazard suit for approaching these icky creatures.
Yeah, it was like that scene from Aliens or whatever.
Yeah. But then I agree that it's funny, but then she kind of gets the short end of the stick as really not being so much of her own person as being comedic relief.
Yes. But this episode does redeem her, does it not?
Yes.
We see so many examples of Rarity just being generous, whether it's something little like letting someone else use the coin-operated telescope first, or willing to be away from her friends in Manehattan to make the dresses for that musical, so that she can make up for them not being able to go to that showing because they were making all her dresses. And I think more importantly, we see the result of her generosity. We see her generosity being repaid by the bellhop and the taxi driver, where they help her later on. And we also see that generosity being abused, like with Suri. And we also see that other people just flat out aren't generous, like when they're trying to get the taxi. And I think that that's a really important lesson, that being generous doesn't guarantee you anything, and you need to be careful, but it's a good moral compass and a good way to act.
You want to develop a higher moral ground.
Yeah.
Right. If anybody got the short end of the stick in this episode, it was definitely Spike.
I agree with that.
I feel like ever since like the humdrum episode, it was like, no, Spike, you can be much more than just a supporting character. But here, hold these bags. I bought you a hot dog. Oh no, a bird ate it. Oh well, keep working. Nobody cares about you. You had like, what, 3 lines? Not even?
Well, it wouldn't be a Rarity episode with Spike if Spike wasn't being abused somehow, was it? And until the episode really got started, I was expecting more of that Spike/Rarity dynamic. But I do have to give this episode credit, because despite all the main 6 being there and Spike being there, it's a Rarity-focused episode. But the main 6 are integral to the plot in how they interact with Rarity, not necessarily each other. They help Rarity out, which is what friends do, but they also illustrate the change in Rarity when she kind of goes down the path of Suri and takes advantage of them so that she can get all her dresses done on time. So it's a really effective use of having all the characters there, but maintaining the focus on the one character that the story is really about.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's about Rarity. It's about her element. It's about generosity, which, what do you know, is the name of the song in this episode. So why don't we talk about that?
How about both songs? Those were great.
Both songs, yes. The second song was a little short, but it was a reprise, so...
It was.
So it was like the reprise of This Day aria, but it's a shame it couldn't have been more like I've Got to Find a Way, because that had a good length and shares a lot of the same tone that the reprise did here.
It was really short, but I mean, at least we got 2 very well orchestrated songs, you know, regardless of how short they were.
Well, it was a very different feel for a Rarity song too, because we've had Art of the Dress and The Pony Every Pony Should Know, and those were a lot more up-tempo, almost pop-style songs. Here, it feels a little slow for a Rarity song, which maybe that's just more fitting with the tone, the style of the song that they want, but it was a little surprising. Again, it was nice to see something new, but again, it kind of took me off guard seeing a Rarity song so differently presented.
Like slow how, like big band kind of New York 20s swing slow, or like, you know, trying to set like a very dramatic point, kind of like slow Titanic opening slow?
I think more the former. It was like with Bats. I was expecting an Applejack on the Farm song. Here, I was expecting the Rarity and Dresses songs. And those always have a lot of energy to them. And this has an energy, but it's carried in a different way.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I mean, both songs have been surprising, like you said, but at the same time, surprising in a good way. Like changing up the formula, but still making it work.
It's something fresh, it's something new, and I think that it fits the episode, because Rarity isn't the kid in the candy store thing. She's kind of, you know, walking down the streets head held high kind of energy, not Pinkie Pie energy. And actually, talking about just walking down the street, I like Applejack and Rainbow Dash's conversation, where Rainbow Dash talks about ponies just breaking into song as the cue in for this one.
Right. Oh, speaking of Pinkie Pie, I feel like she's been kind of getting typecast as the spaz more than anything else. Just even more so this episode, whether she's falling down the stairs, you know, saying, "Oh, I like jumping up and down," with no context whatsoever. The magic card trick.
Yeah.
It feels like they're dumbing her down too much, and that kind of disappoints me.
Well, just like earlier in season 4, we saw Rarity still being a bit of a drama queen in Castlemania and Bats. Here we have a really well put together episode that showcases Rarity's character, and I'm certain we're going to see that with the other characters as well, including Pinkie Pie. It's a fine line because each character's shtick is an easy way to bring out part of their personality, but on the other hand, you're right, you don't want the characters to become parodies of themselves, which I don't think they have.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I will say that I have encountered a large number of Rarity haters that are, she's too prissy, she's too much of a fashionista, she's too dramatic. Well, yeah, but I think because there's like a slight hyperbole to her persona and people don't take it as hyperbole.
I don't know, the outcry from the fan base about, Rarity being too prissy, I tend to just kind of ignore that, because I feel like, maybe, well, hopefully the writers are setting something up where, like in this episode, there's a bit of redemption to that, but at the same time, you can use her as a character dynamic to reflect on other characters.
How dare characters be a source of comedy? It fits with their character traits. They're not being goofballs, they're being themselves, just in a way that is humorous, and do we not want the show to be funny?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And not to dumb it down, you can't just say, well, the show's supposed to be funny so they can do whatever they want with the characters, but I think the characters are being treated with respect by the writers. They're not making them out to be complete parodies of themselves, and in a lot of the cases, the characters aren't just acting out, they're reacting to something, so there's some justification for their actions taking place.
Right. No, it's like what happened in, the season 2 opener with Discord. It's the dark reflections of everybody's characteristic, but put up in such a way that they become like a straw man, so overblown with their own element in the negative perspective that they have all become humorous characters. I mean, come on, how long has the Tom the Rock thing lived on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, rocks do stick around for a long time.
Yep. Here comes Tom, and he never left.
Yeah.
Funny thing I kind of thought, though, is they kind of nailed down the whole New York intern thing.
Yeah.
Like, Coco coming in, and it's like,
Go get me coffee!
Yeah, that's very I mean, God, her cutie mark should have just been like a paper cup of coffee if she was an intern.
No.
Just like, either that or like a water cooler jug or something.
Yep.
Because you're so lucky to be here. You're so lucky to have me. I'm going to abuse, you and do all kinds of busy work with you. And then you're going to love me for it because I'm going to teach you how to succeed in this world while you do all my work.
Oh, well, what was her cutie mark, do you know?
It's a hat. I don't know why it's so funny, but it's a hat.
Oh, well, not to look too much into it, but it's interesting to point out that Suri's cutie mark is buttons, and we don't really see her make anything. It's always Coco, so it's interesting to think that her skills, at least working with her hooves, are limited to sewing buttons back on, whereas Coco's the one that can actually create fashion. It would certainly add to the unfairness of their professional relationship. We really should talk more about the location in this episode. Callie had mentioned that Manehattan really is the perfect place for an episode about generosity.
Yeah. Living 2 hours outside of New York City, I've been there a whole bunch of times. And New York City is definitely full of not generous people and people that very much want to just go on their way without being bothered or want to take your money. So Rarity being in a place that people often are known to not be very generous, spreading generosity makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
She's filling a quota that has been deprived because of whatever reason, business world, I guess, but yeah.
Well, New York, it's like, I lived there for 7 years. They tell the city never sleeps, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing with it is there's just this air of absolute busyness that's just kind of perforating throughout, and then everybody's got a place to be, nobody's got the time of day, it's super crowded, the cabbies are a little obnoxious. And I mean, that whole cab line thing, that kind of didn't make sense to me, because I've seen people snag cabs off of people right under their nose by just cutting in front of them and driving off.
That does happen.
I have never seen a cab line that organized.
Yeah, that does happen.
And what better place to find Rarity's character foil?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Place where everybody's just looking to take advantage of you, pretty much.
Well, and you need a location like this for an episode about generosity to exist. Ponyville just isn't going to cut it. I mean, other than episodes like Putting Your Hoof Down, most of the people in Ponyville are already pretty generous. They're pretty nice people. It's almost like the traits of the main six are really pervasive there. In Manehattan, not so much.
Yeah. I think how you were saying most of the people in Ponyville kind of share characteristics of the main six. I think that might be attributed to the main six having lived there for a long time. And they obviously help out their friends around Ponyville and things like that. So I think they've kind of influenced one another versus when they're in this new place and they don't really know anyone, they're kind of a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. And I think a lot of the people, like in the montage of this song, were kind of surprised and taken aback. At least that's what I got from most of the reactions.
Well, even at the bellhop at what seems to be a really nice hotel, he gets the tip from Rarity, and his immediate thought is, well, let me get you some change.
Yeah. Hey, you need a change for that?
Like, that's the expected response. Someone gives you a tip, and they immediately ask you for the change.
I've never seen a bellhop ask somebody, hey, do you want change?
Yeah.
It's like the pizza guy. It's like, give him the 20, hey, you want change for this? Never heard that before in my life.
Well, talking about the main six have been in Ponyville for so long, and that has to amount for something. We see what happens when their cutie marks get switched around. In Magical Mystery Cure, the entire place just falls apart. Mm-hmm. But Ponyville is still presented as an ideal. It's not necessarily something that exists anywhere. It's something you can aspire to. I'm pretty sure nobody watching the show lives in a place like Ponyville. And that's one of the reasons for having the characters be so varied in their personalities, is that odds are one of the characters is going to click with you. It's going to be someone that you can really relate to. And I think a lot of the viewers can relate to living in Manehattan and how people treat each other there. And that's why I think one of the big lessons is with Suri's assistant, Coco Pomel, which is a great little nod to the designer Coco Chanel. Mm-hmm. By the end, seeing the actions of the main six, she's able to break herself out of that cycle. She learns that you don't have to become the people around you. And for a lot of viewers, I think that that's an especially important thing for people to learn.
Yep. I don't know, I kind of feel like at the same time it was like Rarity going, oh look, plot device, you can let me go home quicker, and here you go, take this whole theater contract that I was obligated to do. Go forth, intern, do your job.
Well, that was a huge tease when Rarity was saying, I have to stay in Manehattan to work on these dresses to repay her friend at the theater for putting on the show for her friends, so Rarity could make up for how she treated them earlier. And I think it really works because there's so much generosity going on in the episode. That's what it's about. And this would definitely be a huge sacrifice for Rarity to make for her friends. So I really think that's why it works to the degree that it does. Although ultimately it would mess with season 4 so much if Rarity was gone for half of it.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And like in Castlemania, when they have the journal, they talk about, other ponies can learn from us by reading this. And that's what happens here. Coco learns from them. And so it's nice that they wrap up her subplot, even though she doesn't really have much of a subplot.
Other than the fact that she can crank out, a whole dress line in a few hours with stolen fabric.
Yes, she can do the work of the main six. Although we've seen Applejack try to make dresses before, didn't we?
Mm-hmm, she can do everything Rarity can in half the time.
Oh, there you go.
And then there was that whole hotel chic thing that was kind of funny. The
lampshade,
the bellman's uniform, and all the keys, the soap. Soap. I thought that was so funny.
Getting flashbacks to Suited for Success with some of the dresses the main six had designed, right?
The
I want it entirely made out of soap and hotel bar keys. Berry Punch, we can't do this. I said soap and hotel bar keys.
Oh, Lord. Well, it seems like what happens with Coco is what's going to make this episode tie in with the rest of the season later on. When Rarity's at the show, she realizes that her friends aren't there to see her, and you have that rainbow shimmer effect on the rope where they would have been sitting. You see that effect reflected in her eyes, and that's when she realizes she needs to go. Mm-hmm. And later on, she gets that gift from Coco, which ties back into that.
Rarity is writing in the friendship journal that they've developed in place of letters, and then opens up the box from Coco, and there's a spool of rainbow thread. And obviously we're connecting Rainbow back to that phenomenon that happened with the rope and her eyes, and she realized she had screwed up and missed her friends. So she puts it on the shelf next to some other spools of thread, and it
pans out to the what you said, the primary colors of the main six.
Yes. So The camera kind of lingers on the spool of rainbow thread at the very end of the shelf, and it does a little shimmery thing that could be indicative of possibly being a key. I mean, she acquired it through her element, being in her element, and obviously there's some kind of friendship rainbow power thing going on, as we saw when she realized she didn't have her friends and she needed her friends. And it's very possible and very likely that keys aren't going to be in the shape of keys, and that's just going to make everything more complicated and more exciting.
Mm-hmm. I guess if you work with the element-centric episodes like this one, I can see how, within the rest of the season we can crank out another potentially 5 more spread out, because up to this point I'd kind of thought they'd forgotten about the whole box thing and we're going to save it for one big last hurrah, like they did with
Princess Twilight
season 3 with Magical Mystery Cure, how you had that double feature musical, which was still one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Was it a double feature? I don't remember.
Yeah, Magical Mystery Cure was just the one part, unfortunately. Looking back at the box, I don't want to call it a fake out that we might not be dealing with keys, because the keyhole implies that the box needs to be unlocked. When you think unlocked, you think keys. But with the 26 episodes, they can certainly have the standalone episodes, but every now and then throw in one of the element episodes, like with Generosity here. And looking at the gift from Coco, you could certainly see it having some significance, because the main 6, and Rarity in particular, changed Coco's life through the element of generosity. And so it's a gift from someone who was transformed by that element. And so you can certainly see it, not being a stretch, that that's going to have some significance later. And actually looking at it, it doesn't just shimmer, but both the rope and the thread shimmer in the colors of the main 6.
Indeed.
Certainly.
To bet that the rest of the potential keys are going to be rainbow-themed objects attributed to that pony's specific talent. So, Rarity got a spool of thread, she's into fashion. Twilight might get a rainbow book.
So we're just going to jam the entirety of Rainbow Dash into a keyhole now?
Possibly, I don't know. But what I'm wondering is, you've got Applejack, is she just going to get a Zap Apple? I don't know.
Just smush it in the slot, like, up, nap, up. Great, thanks. Thanks.
Obviously, there's got to be some rainbow power attributed here. Like, the more I think about it, the more I'm absolutely sure that this has to be some key, and something is going to happen that these artifacts are going to become keyhole insertable.
Well, by them not being keys, by them just being artifacts, it makes speculation almost useless, because it's just too wide open. It could literally be anything. There's so much that relates to the characters that their artifact could come in the form of. But if we do see another episode with the rainbow shimmer and what looks to be another artifact, then at that point, I think we can pretty much confirm that that's the direction that they're going.
Agreed. They're like horcruxes, these little artifacts.
Well, I think whatever happens, we can rest assured in the fact that the folks over at KPNY and at Everfree News have not brought to our attention a line of rainbow-powered ponies that has been announced on Hasbro's Facebook website. That is not what we are dealing with. Of course, everything is okay. Well, not to get too caught up in the season finale here, I think there's a lot of other great stuff in this episode that we at least need to call out. One quick thing is, looking at the credits, I was surprised to find out that Kathy Wesseluk actually voiced Coco Pommel. Though I guess she has voiced minor characters in the past. And then there was the judge, Prim Hemline.
Oh yeah, with the really, really prissy walk. Oh my god, that bothered me so much.
Yeah.
Just the way she moved, she completely got her forelegs all the way up at like a less than a 45-degree angle, and just, I don't know how she moved forward.
And she actually does the tail flick. I swear she's got to be related to Harshwini somehow.
Yep.
Somehow.
In some way.
Yeah, that familial jawline.
What was the relationship between Rarity and Suri?
Weren't they at like a knitting club or
In
something?
Ponyville, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because seeing someone from a character's past kind of gives me a bit of a Gilda vibe. It seems everybody the main 6 knew before each other ended up being a bit of a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is true.
All your friends were terrible until you're destined to meet your soulmates. That's what this is teaching us.
And a wonderful lesson it is.
They're out there somewhere, and hopefully you saw some kind of rainbow flashy thing in the sky before you got a tattoo on your butt.
We're all drawn together by mystical forces because our other friends were complete jerks. Oh my god, it's like high school all over again.
Well, that's kind of true. Yeah, that kind of happens in real life.
On having Manhattan based off of New York, there's so many references that get added. There's too many to mention.
Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, you got Gene Kelly.
Oh god, yeah, that's right.
Well, and there's so many Broadway references, or Bridal Way references, as they say in this episode. You have the poster for Cats in the streets, and you have them going to see the play Hinny of the Hills, which seems to be a parody of The Maid of the Mountains. Grumpy Cat, which makes an appearance as a cutie mark, which seems very appropriate for the city.
Mad Men.
Mm-hmm.
Mad Men, yes, that one actually had to be pointed out to me because I haven't seen the show, but it fits perfectly if that's the time period, the style that they're sort of going for with Manhattan.
Right along that same kind of thread where it's like, you've got, your cabbies with the funny accents and the one that kind of looked like Flash Sentry getting out of rehab, and you got the nice bellhops who still have the uniforms, and the secretary on the typewriter who seemed the most aloof character ever until she saw the fabric, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It was just like New York tropes, but the story itself seemed pretty fresh.
Well, I think that helped make it such a great location for this story. I mean, we hadn't really seen Manhattan before outside of those flashbacks with Applejack.
Oh yeah, her orange other family.
It really works having all of these references and details because it makes the city more fleshed out, but I think it's doubly important in this episode because the city needs to have a feel to it, and it really needs to be able to contrast with generosity. It needs to feel like a place where people can lose faith in that almost. Places where good ponies like Coco can feel like it really is every pony for themselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The only thing is, Manhattan is definitely not that clean.
Oh, Jesus, no. Those glimmering sidewalks would be a lot more chewing gum encrusted.
Absolutely not.
I'd just give Manhattan a couple decades, right? No. Well, it looks like it's about time for final thoughts and scores. So, Callie, would you like to sum up your thoughts on this episode and give us a score from 1 to 5?
Sure. I would probably give it about a 4 because I'm well disposed towards Rarity. I got a bit of a bias. And I think this episode did a lot for her and her character in terms of we actually get to see an episode that she doesn't have to be taught how to be her element. She's more of herself in this episode, and I really like that. And it's just one of the better Rarity episodes thus far.
D-Pad?
I mean, I liked it. It was enjoyable. I liked both the songs, even though one was a lot shorter than the other one. They were both well orchestrated. The plot line was, pretty fun. I kind of liked all the homages to New York City and all that. But I mean, it wasn't like my all-time favorite episode. It was still a good episode. But yeah, I'm going to give it a 3. I mean, I enjoyed it. Nothing inherently wrong with it. I just wish they would have done a little bit more to draw it out because, it's probably going to be a little forgettable for me.
Well, then.
What? Somebody's got to be the hard-hitting judge here.
Of course. Well, D-Pad, I agree. I would have to watch this episode some more times to see how it would hold up for multiple viewings, but I loved this episode. Like Kelly had said, in previous seasons, Rarity wasn't necessarily living up to the title of Element of Generosity, and I really think she redeems herself here. Whether it's specifically the lesson that she writes down at the end or not, this episode says a lot about her element and the applications of it and the repercussions of it. And in that respect, I think it's probably the best example we've seen of it yet. Granted, Rarity isn't a perfect character, and we don't want the characters to be perfect. Nobody's perfect, and making mistakes is one way that we learn things. This is really a place where you can feel it's every pony for themselves, and that gets to Rarity too. But earlier in the season, we switched from the letters to Celestia to the journal, and that was about other ponies learning from the main 6, even though the main 6 can still learn something, as we've seen here. And that's exactly what we see. We see Coco's character. Her life was changed by the main 6, and so I think that really shows the growth of these characters and what they can do in episodes, even though they've kind of graduated from, Twilight being Celestia's student.
I agree, and I even think we got to see some character growth with Coco. I mean, she ultimately did something that I think a lot of people wouldn't have had the courage to do, but perhaps after seeing this and seeing how Coco turned out, might be able to acquire that sort of courage to say, no, you're not doing, you're doing something wrong, and I want to write it.
Yeah, and it's just a perfectly well-rounded episode. I love the little teases they have around the commercials at the end there. You've got some goofy moments, like when Dash says, "It was I," to the play. It balances some of the heavier moments of the episode, and it's just got so many good lessons, and the characters come across wonderfully. I gotta give this episode a 4.5 out of 5. So that's about all for today's episode. Once again, with me were Calligraphy.
See ya!
And Dpad.
Mwah! Good night, everybody.
You are not Screw Loose.
I know.
And thank you again for joining us. And thank you to everyone that tuned in. I've been your host, Ramble, and tune in next week for our review of Season 4, Episode 9, Pinky Apple Pie. See you next time.